Doug Christie has these Kings playing defense. A 15-0 run to steal a win and stun the Philadelphia 76ers. 113-107, the final score. Multiple guys stepped up big defensively down the stretch, but none were better than De'Aaron Fox, who was absolutely sensational. We'll discuss it all right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all season long. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News, and I, just like all of you, needed tonight, right after the last week or so with all of the dysfunction around the Sacramento Kings organization, a win like tonight to come back and steal a game that looked like the Kings were going to lose against, sure, a shorthanded Philadelphia 76ers team. Joel Embiid did not play in this game, but still a very talented 76ers team. This wasn't like the Kings win over the Dallas Mavericks a couple nights ago where basically everybody on that team was missing. Paul George still played. He was fantastic until the fourth quarter. Tyrese Maxey still played. A couple of Kings killers over the years. Eric Gordon, Kyle Lowry both played, right? This was still a very formidable Philadelphia 76ers team that I think felt, just like most of us in this Golden One Center felt, like they were going to end up winning this game. But the Kings come roaring back. And I talked about how the Dallas Mavericks win in many ways took on the identity of Doug Christie, of how we know Doug Christie to be from his time as a player here in Sacramento, right? He was the defensive anchor, the defensive juggernaut, the lockdown guy, the pest, the guy that was assertive and always a fighter, always brought the fight on the defensive end of the floor. That's what the Sacramento Kings did tonight. So if the win against Dallas embodied Doug Christie, then this win against the Philadelphia 76ers tonight was Doug Christie basically in the flesh, right? Everything about the last 3 minutes of this game was fantastic, right? Doug Christie's coaching his absolute heart out with this team. With around 3 minutes and 20 seconds or so remaining, Malik Monk is at the line shooting free throws. And while he's shooting free throws, my eye catches Doug Christie, who comes all the way up to the half-court line, which is as far as he can go, with the Kings shooting on the opposite basket from where the Kings bench is. And he waves over De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis, the two Kings stars, the two Kings leaders. And he has a quick conversation with them. And that caught my eye. And I actually asked De'Aaron Fox after the game about what was said in that quick little meeting and what sparked what happened afterwards. Here was De'Aaron Fox sharing what Doug said in that meeting.
Fox, paying attention to Doug on the sideline, he seemed pretty animated and fired up with coaching on the defense. When Malik was taking free throws, he called you and Sabonis over right before that 15-0 run started. Are you able to share just what he was saying just in that moment to the two of you?
With that, it was we could be aggressive because I think at the time we might have had one foul. So, you have 3 fouls to give, so be aggressive defensively. And then offensively at the time, I think PG had 5 fouls, so we wanted to get him in action. But most of it was just continue to do what we were doing. Obviously, we went in the quarter down 9, and I think we were tied at that time. So it was continue to get stops and be even at that point, we could have been overly aggressive for the next 90 seconds because we had 3 fouls to give. And we were able to do that, and we were able to get some steals and get out in transition.
So Doug brings Domas and Fox over, relays everything that Fox just shared there, and also kind of challenges them, right? Just says, hey, lead. We need you to kind of step up and go share this message with the rest of the team. Let's be aggressive. Let's attack. We have fouls to give. Let's be aggressive and try and win this game, right? From that point on, including the Malik Monk free throws, the Sacramento Kings went on a massive run. After Malik's free throws, the Kings defense forces a shot clock violation by the 76ers. Then the Kings go down and score. On defense again, DeMar DeRozan, who comes back into the game at this point, helps defending Tyrese Maxey and steals the ball from Maxey, gets a transition layup on the other end, and ties the game up. Then, on the other end of the floor, defensively, Tyrese Maxey looking to attack De'Aaron Fox. At this point, Paul George had fouled out of the game. So Tyrese Maxey is looking to be the hero and now take over the primary scoring responsibilities. Again, the game is tied at this point. Maxey is trying to attack De'Aaron Fox, who has the clamps set in, right? Fox gave Maxey no room, no ground. Maxey is an incredibly quick and explosive guard. He is tough to deal with when he gets downhill. Fox stays in front of him, forces him to take a really tough forced shot. He misses. Kings get the rebound. Monk in transition on the other end gets the 2 points because his shot was goaltended. So the Kings take the lead. Philadelphia takes a timeout. Kings are on this massive run. The Golden One Center is erupting at this point, right? This building was unbelievably loud. So Philly calls the timeout. As the Kings are taking the floor, again, I'm paying attention to Doug Christie. What is Doug doing? Doug really quickly brings all 5 of the guys together again, and he is animated, right? You can tell he's trying to fire his team up. This is defense. The Kings need to stop. This is who Doug Christie is. This is what Doug Christie is all about. Who Doug Christie was. He lived for these moments as a player, and he stepped up big in these moments time and time and time again when he wore a Sacramento Kings jersey. And now holding a Sacramento Kings clipboard, he tried to bring part of that past out and influence his team. How does his team respond? Malik Monk steals the ball from Paul George. So I misspoke earlier. I guess Paul George was still in the game and had not fouled out yet. Paul George still in the game. Malik Monk steals the ball from Paul George. And Keon Ellis also had some help on this play too. Keon did a really, really good job as an undersized guard trying to defend Paul George with Keegan Murray being out. We'll talk about Keon a little bit more later on in the show. Monk steals the ball, and then he's fouled. Steps to the free throw line, drains a pair of clutch free throws. Malik Monk was a perfect 10 of 10 from the foul line tonight. That puts the Kings up by 4. So Philly gets the ball back. They advance the ball. Now, little PTSD from a week ago when the Sacramento Kings lost to the Detroit Pistons by giving up a 4-point play. That's all the Sixers could get at this point. They needed a 4-point play with like 7 or so seconds remaining. I suppose they could have tried to score quick and play the foul game, but they were looking for potentially a 4-point play, and the Kings have had a little bit of an issue recently with fouling 3-point shooters, right? They fouled a 3-point shooter 4 times in the last 2 games. So this has been an issue for the Kings recently. But the Sixers don't even get a chance at a 4-point play because DeMar DeRozan steals the inbound from, I believe, Kyle Lowry, who inbounded it, and that ends it. The Sacramento Kings go on a 15-0 run. The Sixers don't score a single point over the final 3 minutes and some change of this game. The Kings get the victory 113-107. The beam is lit, and the Golden One Center, like I said, was just bonkers. Over the course of this fourth quarter, the Kings forced 9 Sixers turnovers. 9 turnovers in the quarter. 5 of them were steals by the Kings, and the Kings scored 13 points off of the Sixers turnovers. Paul George was cooking the Kings tonight, right? He was the hot hand, and Paul has been struggling as of late. I don't think he surpassed the 20-point mark over the last 6 games. And here he is, like the Kings being the Tylenol of the league. Here he is, no Joel Embiid, and he looks fantastic, right? He's knocking down shot after shot. He reaches 30 points at the 3-minute and 59-second mark of the third quarter. That was significant because it's just the second time this season that Paul George has reached 30 points. So Paul is cooking, right? For the remainder of the game, the final 3:59 of the third quarter and all of the fourth quarter, Paul George doesn't score another point. And on the opposite end of the floor, the Kings attacked him relentlessly, got him into foul trouble, and once he was in foul trouble, they continued to attack him. They get him to foul out of this game in the closing moments. The Kings, in the fourth quarter, were assertive, aggressive. They set the tone. They were relentless, right? They did not stop when things started to snowball. It was a standing 8 count for the Sixers at times. They took a couple big shots. They were staggering. The referee stopped it for a second, and then as soon as he said fight, the Kings right back on the attack to try and finish it there and knock this team out, and that is what they did. It was Doug Christie. It was Doug Christie defense. It was Doug Christie's identity that we saw play out from the Sacramento Kings in that fourth quarter. I love to see it. Even if I am a champion of Mike Brown and a major believer in Mike Brown, and I have not wavered on my belief that Mike Brown should not have been fired, and I'm still very pissed off that Mike Brown was fired. You're not going to see me not celebrating the accomplishment by Doug Christie and what this team did tonight. Like I said, I needed it just as much as you guys needed it. Doesn't solve everything. Not everything is solved. Not everything is perfect, right? The Kings still have work to do, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later on in the show. But how the Kings played, how the Kings closed out this game, how they really embodied the spirit and energy of their coach, who was just as animated and just as fired up on the sidelines, and like I said, was coaching his heart out. I love to see it. It fired me up as a media member, fired me up as a Sacramento Kings fan. Here is Doug Christie after the game talking about the crowd, the spirit of the Sacramento Kings fan base, who of course he knows very, very well because he played in front of them. He has a special connection with Kings fans here who are unbelievable in the Golden One Center, by the way. Right, the Kings have been going through absolute turmoil over the last week. They've been embarrassing at home. This building's still packed, still loud, like the Kings are in the playoffs and are a championship contender, right? They were incredible. And what I love about this bite at the very end, Doug shares how he wants Kings fans to feel and what he wants them to say about the Kings after every single game.
These are the times that we have to overcome. We have to figure out a way to make it happen. We have to manufacture what we need. And that crowd, incredible, like playing for that crowd and in front of that crowd. I think like that is the spirit that I like to see out of them on a night-to-night basis. And again, just super proud of them. Pleased, I think the word is proud, like it was Sacramento proud, I guess. That's probably the word because, during times like these when things like all that has went on has happened, there's two things that you can do. You can give up, you can let up, or you can get at it. And these guys, they continue to come in, to respond, to listen, to try and do what I'm asking of them, which I know is like super extremely hard because there's a conditioning aspect to what I'm asking you to do because you got to play hard on both ends of the floor. And as somebody who did that, I totally understand it. But as I told them, these fans deserve that. This is our house. We want to defend our house. We're going to have ups and downs. Like, I get that. But the one thing when you walk out of here is like, damn, they play really hard. That's what you want when they walk out.
Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by Rocket RX. If you're ready to boost your confidence and take control in the bedroom, Rocket RX has the solution. Imagine feeling more prepared and performing at your best. Rocket RX makes it simple and stress-free. Rocket RX offers FDA-approved treatments for erectile dysfunction at a lower cost than branded alternatives. No more uncomfortable doctor's visits or pharmacy trips. Everything is delivered straight to your door in discreet, plain packaging. With Rocket RX, you'll get trusted care from a retail U.S. clinical team, and you'll get all you have to do is complete a quick 100% online consultation, and you can get your free prescription today. Visit rocketrx.com to get started now. It only takes 2 minutes. Right now, our listeners can get 40% off of your first order when you use code LOCKEDONNBA. That's rocketrx.com with the code LOCKEDONNBA for 40% off your first order. Terms and conditions apply. Rocket RX. Better sex made simple. De'Aaron Fox was brilliant tonight. Absolutely brilliant. A performance that we needed to see, sure. I know his name has been floated around in all sorts of conversations and rumors, whether it's trade rumors or criticisms about his leadership style or whatever. It's not been an easy week or two for De'Aaron Fox either. But this is one of those games where we could, at least for 48 minutes, put that all aside and just sit back and enjoy what was in front of us. It wasn't a perfect game for De'Aaron Fox, but my goodness, was it close at times. Offensively, Fox was unbelievably efficient, right? 35 points, 13 of 16 from the field, 2 of 4 from three-point range, 3 rebounds, 4 assists, and a block, right? Offensively, De'Aaron Fox, the efficiency that De'Aaron Fox played with was stupid good, right? And the Sixers had no shot of staying in front of him, right? There wasn't a guy. Tyrese Maxey is very quick, very explosive. Tyrese Maxey couldn't stay in front of De'Aaron Fox, right? Not that he was trying to even guard De'Aaron Fox that much. They threw Caleb Martin at Fox at times, no chance. Every time Paul George tried to guard De'Aaron Fox, De'Aaron attacked him off the dribble and blew by him and got to the rim or got to his spots at will. And that was what we saw from this game from De'Aaron. It was a clinic of putting the ball on the floor, attacking, and either getting to that floater, that pull-up jumper around the elbow or the free throw line, or just getting to the rim and finishing at the rim, right? The fact that he can have a 35-point game and only take 4 3-pointers, only hit a pair of 3-pointers, right? This is vintage De'Aaron Fox. This is what a lot of Sacramento Kings fans were calling for last season when it felt like Fox was a little too reliant on the 3-point shot. Fox said, I'm getting to the basket because nobody can do a damn thing to stop me. Offensively, he was excellent, and he was very, very good offensively at the start of the fourth quarter to help the Kings close the gap and ultimately lead to that 15-0 run that they went on to close this game out. But as great as the offense was for De'Aaron, as efficient as it was, I want to talk about Fox's defense. Because DeMar DeRozan, Malik Monk, Keon Ellis, right, they all got big steals down the stretch, right? And they all deserve their flowers for the great defense that they played in the fourth quarter especially, too. Some of them, like Keon, played great defense throughout the entire night. But Fox's stat line will show 0 steals, right? What Fox was doing didn't really show up on the box score. But Fox's fourth quarter defense was superb. And what it really made me do is it made me appreciate, right, what Fox is doing and what Fox is capable of doing. You just don't see from stars of his caliber very often, from star point guards. You just don't see what Fox is doing. His defense in the fourth quarter was sensational. I talked about the play earlier where he clamped up Tyrese Maxey, right? He is the guy that throughout the game, I'm not just talking about he was great in the fourth quarter and was fine or so-so the other 3 corners. He was good defensively throughout this game. But he is the point guard. He is the star with the workload and expectation that he has on the offensive side of the ball. He's the guy. He's the star typically guarding the other team's star. He spent time on Paul George in this game. Spent time on Tyrese Maxey, a ton of time on Tyrese Maxey in this game. Started the game guarding Tyrese Maxey, right? You just don't see a lot of star point guards of Fox's caliber having this much of responsibility on both sides of the ball and taking the initiative as much as Fox did, right? Fox's defense in the fourth quarter, I thought, was brilliant and worth really pointing out and really gushing about because, like, the Kings don't even come close to being able to go on that 15-0 run without the defense that Fox was playing. And even though Monk got a big steal and DeRozan got a couple of big steals and Keon Ellis made some big defensive plays down the stretch, De'Aaron Fox, I thought, was the anchor, was the starting point, the tone setter for how the Kings played defense in the fourth quarter. He's a leader by example, right? We talked about this a lot, and we've been very critical. I've been very critical here on Locked On Kings over the years, but especially recently, about De'Aaron Fox's leadership style. But when he leads by example like this defensively, it's easy to see the impact that it has on his teammates around him because Fox is going to play that hard on the defensive end. I got to step up to the plate and do that too. In fact, I asked Doug Christie about that, and Doug did not hold back in his praise for how great De'Aaron Fox is.
DC, you talked a little bit pregame about how great De'Aaron can be on the defensive side of the ball. We've always kind of known him more as a leader by example. When he's playing the kind of defense and the physicality on Tyrese Maxey and setting the tone in that way in the fourth quarter, how much easier does it make it for a DeRozan, a Monk, everybody else to kind of follow suit and step up to follow that?
De'Aaron Fox is elite, man. He is. He has the ability to sit down and guard because of his quickness, his strength, and his athleticism, his anticipation, and then his competitive nature is just high level. And he's finding his way in front of our very eyes, and it's huge, man. I just hugged him and said, "Love you, man. Like, thank you. Like, taking me on a ride because you're taking the city on a ride." and even like when I look at Domas, like 12 defensive, 9 offensive, 21, 17, Malik, like all around. But before we left the locker room, I said to De'Aaron, before we headed out on the floor, it's just like, you set the tone because you are the tone setter. Get downhill and get at them immediately. And they did.
At the same time, with how fantastic De'Aaron Fox was defensively, DeMar DeRozan got the Defensive Player of the Game crown tonight, and he won it in the final couple of minutes. Right, he got 2 steals, both in clutch time. I already laid them out for you. One was on Tyrese Maxey that led to the game-tying layup, and the other one was to stop the 76ers from even having a chance at a 4-point play to tie the game in the final seconds of the game. But 2 big steals when you needed them from DeMar DeRozan, who, of course, is not known for his defense. And not to take this down kind of a negative path with DeRozan, but it's something worth talking about because it was a major talking point I saw in Kings circles and even heard fans talking about it in the arena today during halftime. It's clear offensively that DeRozan has an impact on this Kings offense, right? The Kings definitely showed that they wanted to set the tone to start this game. Right, it was clear after a couple of bad starts in both the Laker loss and even in the Dallas Mavericks win, right, the Kings wanted to get off to a good start in the first quarter, and they wanted to do that by playing with pace. DeMar DeRozan has an impact on Sacramento's pace. When DeRozan is trying to get to his spots and get to his game, which is that midi, post-up, isolation game, it slows the Kings offense down and at times almost brings it to a screeching halt. We're seeing Doug Christie play with and kind of figure out his rotations a little bit more. And one of the things that I noticed tonight, I was talking to Brendan Nunez about this from Sacktown Sports 1140. He had his bench, so he has a starting 5 play together and pretty much his starting 5 close out the game together. But in between those times and in between the start of the third quarter when the starters go back out there, he has a kind of mixture of starters and second unit. It's very common. You stagger your rotations, right? Well, tonight, he was staggering DeMar DeRozan and De'Aaron Fox playing together with a second unit, right? And I didn't like it because Fox naturally wants to play with pace, naturally wants to get up and down, and DeMar DeRozan kind of slows things down. In my opinion, you should have Malik Monk and De'Aaron Fox kind of leading their own unit in the middle parts of quarters, in the middle parts of the game. And then you should have DeMar DeRozan kind of leading his own unit in the middle parts of games. And then the rest of the guys like Keegan when he's playing and healthy, Kevin Huerter even, Domantas Sabonis, right? These are all guys that can fit in and can play with either of them, right? We know they're comfortable in the half court. They are kind of the glue guys, the rotation guys. They fill in the gaps. But I think DeMar would kind of be at his best, and the Kings could better utilize DeMar's style of play in the minutes when De'Aaron and Monk need a breather. Okay, you slow things down a little bit. It's a little more half-court off-oriented. DeRozan, you can kind of cook for us, and you can get going and get your shots up and keep the scoring load going, while, again, Fox in particular and Malik Monk too, guys that like to get up and transition, let them get a breather, right? So I think I would like to see more of DeRozan kind of leading his own second unit without Fox out there because their styles just clash. Not that they can't work together as starters and closers, which we saw tonight, but in those middle parts when you're trying to stagger your rotations of starters and bench players together, I just didn't like the Fox and DeRozan out there with bench players lineup. I just didn't think it worked very well. It seemed a little clunky, and the offense didn't flow very, very well. But other than that, I thought DeRozan was really solid tonight. 18 points, 7 of 14 from the field, 5 rebounds, and then those couple of steals. Then there's Keon Ellis, right? Kings fans rejoiced when they saw that Keon Ellis was starting for the injured Keegan Murray, who, by the way, we're expecting Keegan to not be out long. Hopefully he'll be back on Friday. Keon offensively, 9 points, all of them threes. So he hit 3 3-pointers. Perfect. That's exactly what you want from Keon Ellis. Space the floor, knock down threes if they're open and they're there. Take them with confidence. He did that. And then 4 steals and 2 blocks. I mean, how in the world? It's crazy to think that a guy could have 4 steals and 2 blocks and lose the Defensive Player of the Game crown to DeMar DeRozan, who had just 2 steals. Ultimately, it's not really the quantity that matters. It's stepping up in the moment. DeRozan won it because he's not necessarily known for his defense, but he stepped up big defensively in the moment when the Kings needed it most to secure this victory. But make no mistake about it, Keon was huge defensively throughout this game and also did step up with some good off-ball defensive moments and if there's such thing as defensive assists, Keon was all over those in the fourth quarter during that 15-0 Kings run. But he was fantastic, and he was the guy that had the responsibility out of the gate for guarding Paul George. Now, again, Paul scored 30, and Paul was cooking in the first half, right? Paul was the Sixers offense in the first half. Tyrese Maxey was pretty quiet in that first half, really started getting going in the second half. But the first half for the 76ers was all Paul George. But to be fair, a lot of when Paul George got going was when Keon Ellis went out of the game, and the Kings had only Kevin Huerter to defend Paul George. And Paul looked at Kevin like food, like straight food. And that's just a tough matchup for Kevin, and Paul made him pay for it. But I thought Keon did as good of a job as you can do on Paul George as an undersized guard trying to guard one of the best forwards in the league. Keon made him work, and that's really all that you could do. But again, this is just another example of I hope Monty McNair and Wes Wilcox are watching, because thankfully the Kings won this game, so it didn't come back to bite you too bad. But this is why you need forward depth. And I'm being facetious. Like, of course they know this. I'm being a little sarcastic. Like, of course they know this. I'm preaching to the choir a little bit. But, like, when you have only one guy that is capable of giving you solid defensive minutes against some of these top-tier wings and top-tier forwards, especially when the best teams in the league have a guy typically at that 3 or 4 position, a guy at 6'8", 6'9", 6'10", that can kind of do it all and dominate in that fashion. Keegan is the only response that the Kings have to that. Not that Keon didn't do a bad job or didn't do a good job, but Keon's like a 6'3", 6'4" guard. You can't expect that of him and expect that to be efficient and to work on a regular basis. It's literally just Keegan. So you need desperately depth at that position. You've needed it for 2 years. Hopefully tonight was another good example. You won tonight's game, but Paul George was cooking because Keon's undersized, for one, and two, when Keon came out of the game, the Kings had nobody else to throw at him, especially with De'Aaron Fox trying to do everything he could on guarding Tyrese Maxey. Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions that you forgot about or that you were even paying for twice? Hey, it happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy not just to track them all down, but to help me cancel them. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions. It also monitors your spending and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals that you want to hit in this 2025 year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year with all of the app's premium features. One of the best features that I've come up with is the subscription tracker. It's literally helped me cancel 3 or 4 different subscriptions and track down subscriptions that I didn't realize I was even paying for. I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using, and I've saved a ton of money because of it. Plus, with their goals feature, you can automatically set aside money for the future. No more stressing about the budget every single month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. So the Kings are getting back on track. I won't say they've gotten back on track, but they're getting back on track, right? 2 wins in a row. They're 2-1 in the Doug Christie era, right? They win a game that they should win. It was a little closer and a little more uncomfortable than we would have liked in that Dallas Mavericks win a couple of nights ago, especially with how it started and the Kings being down, like 18 or 19 points in that game. So it wasn't the cleanest of victories against a super shorthanded team, but they got the win. Then you have this game against the Philadelphia 76ers that arguably, the way it was going, the Sacramento Kings should have lost. Without one of their best defensive players, they found a way to win this game on the backs of their defense. They got the win. So this team is getting back on track. Now, this context is important. One, a win in the clutch, like a close win, is exactly what the doctor ordered with this team because the Kings have lost so many freaking games. I think it's like 4-11 now or 4-12 in games that have been decided with 5 or fewer points, right? It's been brutal for the Kings not being able to close out these games. So to close out a close game and to do it on their home floor where they've been so bad, the Kings now 8-12 at home. That was nice to see. The Kings now 15-19 on the season. Is that a good record? Of course not. 4 games under 500. The Kings are trying to scratch and claw their way out of a hole that they dug for themselves, primarily because of that 0-5 5-game homestand that got Mike Brown fired, if we're being completely honest. But here's the reality of the situation, right? Even though the Kings season is not going the way that we expected, even though this team is 4 games under 500, it's important to note that the Kings are only 2 games back of the final play-in spot, 10th, which is held by the Golden State Warriors, who the Kings have not played yet, and in fact will play for the first time on Sunday. The Kings are 3 games back of the Minnesota Timberwolves in the 8th spot, which jumps you up from the lower tier of play-in to the upper tier of play-in, meaning you only have to win 1 game and you're in. In the lower tier, you have to win 2 games and you make it into the playoffs in that 8th seed. So that 8th spot is still very, very important, even if it's still considered the play-in round. The Kings are also 4.5 games back. Now, this is a little more significant. 4.5 games is nothing to scoff at. But they're 4.5 games back of the Clippers in 6th, which is avoiding the play-in altogether. Still achievable, especially with how much of the season is remaining. Now, I can already read the comment section. I can picture it on my mind. Matt, you're sure changing your tune. A couple days ago, you were doom and gloom, and you were pissed off at the Sacramento Kings and thought this team was screwed and thought this team was doomed. In many ways, I still do. Right? But again, my goal is not to poo-poo any of the good things that I'm seeing this Kings team accomplish. I want this team to be good. I want Doug Christie to succeed. I would rather be wrong about the Kings firing Mike Brown and wrong about this team being in shambles or this roster not being good enough. I would rather be proved wrong if it meant the Sacramento Kings were playing well and having an amazing turnaround than I'd rather be right and watch the Sacramento Kings lose and take joy from it. Right? So that's where I'm at this point. It's not me backing up and hitting the back pedal, or what do you call it? Backpedaling from the thoughts and takes that I had earlier about this team, because I do still feel like this team has a long way to go. I think they still have clear holes that the front office absolutely 100% needs to address. The front office is definitely not off the hook for the decisions they've made or haven't made, the moves they haven't made up to this point that got Mike Brown fired. But I didn't want to focus on that and lead with that and keep kind of beating a dead horse with that and making everything a sob story after a Sacramento Kings win. But I do still feel like the Kings, 1, have their flaws that they need to still address, and 2, they have to show this far more than just 2 games. Right? As fun as that fourth quarter was, can they win close games consistently now? Right? Can they be that good defensively on a nightly basis? Hell, on a quarter-by-quarter basis. Can they defend home floor and get this Kings crowd as into games and active and responding to their effort and hustle that they play with as they were tonight? Will Doug Christie get this team to a point like he talked about earlier, where he's saying, when I turn on the Locked On Kings podcast after every single game and you leave the arena or you stop watching at home after every single game and go, damn, that team played hard. Right? Can the Kings get to that point? They still have to prove they can do that consistently. Right? This team has had a number of times this season where they take 2 steps forward, only to take 1, 2, or even 3 steps back. So we need to see it more for me to fully believe that they're capable of doing it. But this is a great step forward. These last 2 games were good steps forward. And I'm rooting for Doug. I'm hoping he can figure it out, and I'm hoping the Sacramento Kings can get something going. Today's Wednesday. On Friday, the Kings take on the Memphis Grizzlies. They're shorthanded, dealing with injuries. No John Morant right now. So that's a gettable game. Like I mentioned, the Warriors on Sunday. You can close in a little bit of ground to make things a little more interesting with them sitting in the 10th seed. The Warriors haven't been playing very well right now, too. There's a lot of teams in the West that are kind of sliding and struggling right now. So the Kings aren't necessarily alone in that. Now, the Kings have been one of the worst, but there's still time to turn it around. So, of course, we'll pay attention to that, and then that might influence how the Kings choose to approach this upcoming trade deadline. On tomorrow's Locked On Kings podcast, I know this is going to sound really weird because I just gushed about how great De'Aaron Fox was. Tomorrow on Locked On Kings, I am getting together with Jackson Gatlin of the Locked On Rockets podcast, and we are talking potential Rockets trade packages for De'Aaron Fox. Again, just because Fox was fantastic tonight and the Kings have won the last 2 games doesn't mean all the problems have gone away and suddenly Fox is magically going to be here forever, right? I still think there's a disconnect between Fox and this front office, and I don't think Fox is too happy, even with how these last 2 games have gone. I don't think he's too happy with how everything went down with Mike Brown. So the possibility, maybe even probability, of losing Fox is still very, very real. By me doing these podcasts, I did one with the Miami Heat recently too. Go and check that out if you missed that. That was yesterday. Me doing these podcasts is not me saying I want to force a trade, get Fox out of here. This is a legitimate conversation. The Kings legitimately will be fielding and maybe even making phone calls about trading De'Aaron Fox, whether it's at this trade deadline or this upcoming offseason. The Rockets are a team that many believe probably can offer the best that the Kings could get in a De'Aaron Fox trade. So I'm going to talk with Jackson Gatlin about that. Hopefully you will join me on that episode. For now, I want to hear from you. Your thoughts on this Kings win tonight, your thoughts on what Doug Christie is doing as a head coach, how De'Aaron Fox and the others played defensively. Let it fly. At MattGeorgeSack on Twitter. Email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com, or leave your thoughts in the YouTube comment section down below. Appreciate your support. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode of Locked On Kings. Until then, my name is Matt George. You've been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.